Hey look, McFarlane just gave Princess Rhaenyra a ride. Here's your look at the brand new McFarlane toys. Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, Dragon Syrax. Princess Rhaenyra became a dragon rider at the age of 7, bonding closely with the golden Syrax, so named after the goddess of old Valyria. Though not the biggest of the Targaryen dragons, Syrax is fast enough to race against Daemon Targaryen's dragon Caraxes to the Dragonstone and back. Time to look at a dragon, providing the Targaryens are okay with that? Okay, good. Before we get a closer look at the House of Dragon, Dragon Syrax, I'd like to first thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample we're about to have a look at. Syrax is available as of right now through online, or if you'd like to find your things out in the wild, he's available as of right now. We're going to also grab the tape measure, and what I'll do first is I'll spin this guy sideways. There was some assembly that was required, and of course we'll talk about the some assembly in a second. In the meantime, though, let's grab the tape measure. From the end of its snout to the end of its tail, you're looking at Syrax being about 15, in fact, it's exactly 15 inches in length. Let's spin this around. Lately, my tape measure's been giving me problems. Maybe time to switch this up. In the meantime, though, back to centimeters. The Dragon of Syrax, again, in this case, I think is about 37 centimeters in length. Certainly not the first rodeo for me when it comes to looking at McFarlane Toys dragons, and to that extent, it's also not the first time McFarlane Toys have released a dragon. And there's a few, of course, to choose from, all of which we've already had a look at here on this channel. I did want to slide this one over, though, and bring in one of an somewhat similar of a pose. Here's what it also looks like with the Dragon Series 8 Syrax. Great looking dragon. I think when you're looking at the sizing of the two dragons, Syrax is definitely a lot bigger, though he's not as long, I would say, as the golden dragon Syrax here. One thing I was happy to see was the Dragon Syrax came included with its own trading card. The trading card, as you can see, does have Princess Rhaenyra down below here, but it shows you just how big the dragon is when you have the small-sized princess in front of it. I like this particular photo, and I would love to see this in a larger scale poster, in fact. This is Syrax listed down below here, a spin-off series from Game of Thrones from House of Dragon. And flip around to the back, while it may not list the real name would simply just be Syrax, it does at least tell you that the rider is Princess Rhaenyra of Targaryen. A paragraph read you can also read for yourself. It so happens, by the way, just before, I don't want to stop you mid-sentence, but it happens to be the same thing I read at the beginning of this video as well. Now, I may not put this necessarily with my DC Multiverse cards, because again, I like to keep those consistently on their own, but I will find myself a separate sheet of these and to store this in here to hope that we may get more of these down the road. Although there really isn't a lot of dragons to choose from, at least from Game of Thrones, I would love to certainly see more trading cards like this. I'm going to put that to the side for right now. One thing I also was nice to see, one thing I was really happy to see, was the fact that they included a placard card on the front of the display stand. There, yes, is some assembly that's required when it comes to Syrax. We'll kind of break things down here right now, but just before doing that, I wanted to show your attention, bring your attention to the fact that there's a front placard here done nicely in a blood crimson red. Love that. I love also the way that they've raised the font too. So you've got Game of Thrones, House of Dragon. The only thing that actually isn't raised is the name of the dragon itself. Syrax is just printed on there, but everything else is raised. I really like the look of that. The actual terrain in which the dragon's standing on top of, sadly, doesn't have any real paint to speak of. There are a few little areas for no reasons whatsoever that are kind of more darker gray. There's one there. There's one there. I don't know if that's intentional or not. And while looking at this one for a second, I thought I was seeing human remains. I think I just wanted to see human remains for some reason. It's all in all, it's a good looking terrain. I just kind of wish there was a lot more paint happening to it. If we flip this up, first of all, one thing you'll see is the fact that the bottom of it is completely hollow, but you'll also see the connecting pegs in which the dragon's feet attach onto the display stand. This is a one-time kind of thing. I would not try to pry the dragon's feet away from that, because I think there's a potential of breaking the little clasps that hold on to the pegs. So once you do this once, I wouldn't do it again. Like I said, there was some assembly that was required for the dragon. The dragon technically comes in 4 parts. The main body of the dragon is one piece. The tail then is a second. And then, of course, the wings are then one thing that you have to attach to the sockets. They all attach by pegs. Pretty easy to do. The wings were the easiest I found to attach. I also found like attaching the dragon's feet to the terrain was pretty easy. The thing, though, wasn't as easy was attaching the tail. Not that it was hard to do, but the fact that the tail seems to come off way too frequently. At least they give you a long enough post, and it's not a case where you want to heat this up, but just when you are putting the tail in, when you get to about here and you feel like you can't go any further with it, you have to take the tail and twist it. It actually twists on an angle, because again, like while looking at it, you almost think it goes straight in and lines up with the contoured lines that match, again, the other side of the tail. But actually, when you are putting it in, you have to twist it to fit it in. It stays, I suppose, somewhat secure. Detail-wise for the dragon, as we spin this around, again, once the assembly is fairly done, everything took me only a couple of minutes to actually snap everything in place. Wings sometimes are things in these dragons that don't always stay in place, but I did notice with Syrax, like the wings are pretty stable. There are the very obvious lines where you can kind of see that the wing is clearly not part of the same body, and especially up here, you can see crease lines, obviously where the shoulders are completely disjointed or completely separate pieces from the rest of the mold, but it's pretty close. This one wing, though, I don't know if you can also see it here. Let me just spin this around so you guys can see it from the back. This one wing always seems to lift up for me. I would imagine that the wing is supposed to be closer to the body, kind of like this. But for mine, at least, and if you have picked up this one for yourself, let me know if you've had similar issues. This one side, at least, never stays properly in place. So this may be something, unlike the tail, that it may heat up to try to get properly in place. Because again, like the wing doesn't 100% line up as well as it should. You can kind of see like there's a gap space right there. Maybe it's supposed to be like this. Maybe the wing is supposed to be lifted higher up. Because to be higher here, you'll notice it actually fits the contour a little bit better. When you bring when you bring the wing down, it doesn't quite line up everything as well as it should. So maybe it's supposed to be like that. It clearly looks like it's supposed to be further down than what it is. Despite that, it's a nice looking dragon. A smaller head this time around on Syrax than maybe some of the dragons that we looked at before, where generally, like, the dragons have had quite large heads. Syrax seems to have quite a lot smaller of a head. The head is pretty close to its neck, as it's one continuous shape. It gets tapered off, of course, when we get to the end snout of it. You can see like the eyes are handled extremely well, considering as small as they actually are. I'm hoping that the camera's able to pick this up as good as I would hope. The eyes, though, they don't have much of a breakup when it comes to the color. They're all pretty much just the same blue, but at least you've got the darker color around it, so it helps to bring those eyes and make them pop a lot more. The mouth in this case doesn't breathe fire, but what it does manage to do, though, is it shows you that inside is a sculpted tongue that's a different color from the rest of its mouth. The sides of the mouth, which do open up, opens up in the sense that it is sculpted that way, does have some lighter coloring of pink. I'm trying to do my best to keep my fingers out of the way of things. You can also see as well that they've painted the top and the bottom teeth in a very bright white. It really helps to stand out. The coloring of the dragon is consistently along those lines of kind of a golden color. You got lighter yellows sort of more on the undercarriage of the dragon. Then as it gets to around the areas, the details for like the wings, where the wings would have naturally accordion, those areas are kind of kept to more the darker color. I say kept because I do feel like the way they've colored the dragon, they probably would have started with a darker color of plastic, maybe along the lines of what we get here for the bottom of the wings, and then they would have then painted the parts over top of it. By painting over top of an existing darker plastic, it gives you an easier chance to be able to give a contrast of color without actually having to go in there and paint two different paints. By only just painting over a darker plastic, it really then gives you a chance for the foreground color to be a lot brighter than the background color being the basics or the darker plastic that they would have started with. But overall, again, I really like the look of this dragon. It's a very lean looking dragon too, with the majority of its legs and I guess this section of its body here being the thickest of the parts. Its neck is very thin, as well as the back of the body right before it begins to start the tail is a very, again, almost very lean, malnourished kind of dragon. It doesn't look like it has any body fat to it at all. Again, while we look at the wings here, the wings, I like the way they've colored these. It matches, again, that same sort of color that they've used for the dark sections of the top of the dragon here. So you've got the darker caramel color. And then again, as it fans itself out, they've taken then a color similar to this, and they would have airbrushed like those areas where, again, like the dragon wing would have naturally folded in. It's, again, a really nice looking dragon. The only thing I would say from the way they've designed the dragon, is the one wing that I've got here on the back. Again, I don't know if it's supposed to be like this. I feel like it should be a lot flatter than what it is, but even then, just to bring the wing down where it's closer and more contoured to the body, you can see how it starts to separate itself from the shoulder socket. So I feel like the wing, by the way that the wing attaches, it has to have a little bit of lip sticking out from the back. Let me know if you've picked up Syrax for yourself, if you've had the same similar issue. Short of maybe the one issue that I have with the wing. Man, that's a nice looking dragon, though. They have actually, in fact, released 2 versions of the dragons from the new Game of Thrones House of the Dragon line that we will be looking at in an upcoming review. But I do like the look of this one. It's smaller. It's sleeker than maybe some of the dragons we've already looked at here on this channel. But I gotta say, it's a nice looking dragon. It does miss, unfortunately, some of the additional colors I think they probably could have put into the display base. But at least, to the credit of the display base, while it is lacking some of the paint, it makes up for it at least by adding that crimson placard on the front of it. Not only getting the chance of getting a look at the House of the Dragon Syrax, but also because of the folks over at McFarlane Toys for providing it. In the upcoming review, we're also going to be looking at the House of the Dragon Syraxes. That's a dragon, honestly, I was going to be looking at first, just because I like the crimson color of it, but I thought I wanted to start things first with the golden, sleeker dragon of Syrax before jumping over to Syraxes. If you guys are interested to get your hands on either one of them, of course, we will be bringing back in Syrax for the comparison along with Syraxes, but if you are interested to get either one of these, they are available as of right now in the wild, or you can also find them online. All in all, a nice looking dragon. Putting everything together again wasn't too hard, although again, the back wing, you still see how it sticks up. Maybe it's supposed to stick up the way it is. I would have thought it would have been a little bit more parallel to the rest of the dragon's body. But you never know. If you have already picked up Syrax, let me know down below in the comments section if your wing, not your wing, if the dragon's wing also sticks up in the back of the figure's body. I mean, to look at it, it looks still like it's finished. Like, it doesn't look like it's unfinished, although you can sort of see the side of the figure's body where the wing would have normally been. Does look like it's a little bit lighter of a color than the rest of the figure's body, but it doesn't look like it's unfinished, like paint never got the chance to even touch that part of the plastic. But you can kind of see right there where there's a little bit of a different degrade or different type of texturing to that part of the dragon's body that isn't found anywhere else. Other than that, though, and having a little bit of lacking paint on the terrain, again, it's a nice looking dragon, though. Whether you have been collecting any of the other McFarlane dragons or just really interested in the ones that are connected to the Game of Thrones House of the Dragon, definitely want to pick this one up if you are a fan of it, though. Big thank you once again to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample of the brand new Game of Thrones House of the Dragon Syrax. Not to be again confused with Syrax from Mortal Kombat. Again, as already mentioned, we will be looking at Syraxes in the upcoming review. Make sure, though, if you, first of all, enjoyed this video, if you don't mind me saying, why not throw it a like? Why not? But if you guys are enjoying the content you guys are seeing and on board, you definitely want to see the review of Syraxes, then make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.